behind, so from region and global. So if anybody has any issues from a financial perspective, you can contact Lindsay if you want to take advantage of any of the subsidies or programs. But essentially, they've said without saying, financial commitment to EO is not going to be a barrier to membership for members. So if there's any issue whatsoever, Lindsay's got all the answers. You can just send her an email being like, hey, I want to check out these programs. What does it look like? And Lindsay will take care of you. I think that's pretty much it. This is a really, really important announcement, actually. All of our bylaws and everybody went through the special meeting. Everything went really well. Mike, you did a great job, Stallion. I know everybody was really excited to hear how that went. Anyway, our governance is in great standing.
Pushed it across the finish line.
Yeah. So thanks for that. And Mike and your team at Miller Thompson, thanks a lot for helping us out. I think that's it. Is there any other updates from you and Mike? Mike is now the president of our chapter. So starting July 1st, he's our president, and I'm done. It was a wonderful time, but Mike is going to be taking over. I know we're all in great hands. Is there anything you wanted to bring up today, Mike?
No, just that some stuff around renewals will be coming out. I know it's a little bit complicated. So we're going to send out some communication on what we have to do, because there's going to be a global portion and a local portion. Just stay tuned for details. But if you have any questions, just ask me or Lindsay or Trisha. We'll have all the deets. So
sweet.
That'll be the next big push.
Yeah. So then we got Rich. Thanks so much for joining us, man. I got introduced to Rich at a GLC in Toronto. I think that was 2 years ago. And I was a big fan of your Be the Iceberg speech. So I'm not going to say it because I don't want to butcher it by any stretch. But in knowing that you were coming, I wanted to just check out some of the content recently. I know Goalcast had put a couple of videos up for you. And there was one that I just thought was amazing. You were telling a story about your aunt and how she was wearing this like really fancy lingerie, kind of like nice pajamas when she was going to bed. And you're just like, Aunt, like, what are you doing? She's like 60 something or whatever. She just turned around and said, you know what, when you're this age, you might end up not waking up, and I don't want the paramedics coming and get me, and I'm not in like, nice dress. And there's just this idea that like, you always got to be ready to live your best day. And I just think that was a really cool message. So I'm not sure. I don't think that's exactly the topic you're bringing to us today, but I just love what you're doing.
Clarify, I did not see my 6-year-old aunt in a lingerie. That was a story she told to my wife. I was thinking, holy shit, you didn't give some context on that one. People were like, oh, this guy, this is a crazy ass South African on their call.
Well, I mean, you are a crazy ass South African, so I think I got some of it right.
My aunt was a beautiful woman. She did actually end up dying at her wedding. That's where the story came into play. She had a heart attack on the front row of her wedding. And my wife always says that when she opened it up, like when they opened up her bodice, we could give her like CPR and stuff. She was like perfectly dressed. And really, it was kind of this realization that this was how my aunt would always have wanted to go. Like if something happened, like surrounded by her family, looking like the shit. So that was it. Yeah.
Awesome. Anyway, thanks, man. I'm a huge fan of everything you're doing for EO and everybody around the world these days. So if you want to just take us through kind of what your topic is for today, and then we'll see if we can't wrap it up.
Rad. Trisha, can I ask if you could just enable screen sharing for me, please?
Yes, of course.
If you just make it that multiple people can present simultaneously, it's no longer a default. And then that'll be great. There we go. Thanks.
You're good? Perfect.
Yeah, perfect. Thank you. So first of all, my first observation just quickly before I start was that around the fees renewal thing, my gut feel is that I feel that there should be a rule that says if you do actually ask to have free fees, no problem, but then you have to sign up to a minimum engagement charter. That if it's going to be free, but then you have to come to at least 5 events a year. I don't think that somebody should be both free and do nothing, because I think that when you don't pay for something, you're kind of less likely to tap in. And I think that people you give free this year will be more likely not to renew next year unless we actually drive them with higher engagement. That's totally nothing about what I was speaking about. And it's literally just what's been playing on in my head. But I do think that there should be some engagement to say, cool, we're happy to give it to you for free if you can't afford to, but then we need you to commit to being part of the organization. Maybe even would you be considered being a day chair for one of our events, something like that, so they become more invested emotionally, even if they're less invested financially. This could be just something worth discussing. Let me just share up here. And
thanks, man.
Cool. And then you guys can. I'm just going to take you through quickly. And Robert asked me just to give you 10 minutes. Very, very quickly, my business is a presentation company. I'm 45. I started it when I was 22. And as of 2.5 months ago, we lost everything. 100% of our business revenue incoming, we do in-person events, died. And all my speaking revenue, last year I spoke in 26 countries. This year, every speaking gig was canceled. And we had to change. And luckily, we came out the gates really quickly. As of 2 weeks ago, we had our pre-COVID revenues back with not a single of our legacy products. So we managed to, bizarrely, it took me 23 years to build a business. And then it took me 2.5 months to build a business that was probably better than the one I had coming in. And it just took this kind of crisis to make it happen. But one of the big spaces that we focused on was the idea of online, the online event space. We knew that that happened to be where we went towards. And for 23 years, I had to make a market. All of a sudden, now I could take one because now people needed to figure this out. And Robert just asked me to give you like 10 minutes on sharing some of the tips that we have around these things. Now, the first thing, and whichever one of you is taking on learning, that you probably, maybe to some degree, is all fearing, is this idea here, is that our members have webinar fatigue. Like that, or we as people have webinar fatigue. And I want to argue that. I want to say, no, you don't. What you have is shit webinar fatigue. Like nobody is bored of going to really, really great events that are really good. They're not bad. Going to an event where nobody is prepared, where you have one person sitting here and one person on another screen here, just asking each other questions and answering things that nobody had to prepare for. That's not value. And I think that we need to separate the bar. And I wanted to give you a few little tips. And again, 10 minutes is a very, very short period of time, but a few little tips and structures just to try and help you. Now, the first rule of being okay at online presenting is being really good at presenting, you know, or unless you're good at presenting in regular sense, you're not going to all of a sudden be amazing when you're doing it online. It's actually harder. So I wanted to share with you the framework we work with on any presentation. And I'm going to share a link with you afterwards to a Trello board that will help you build your presentations. And there's 4 steps to it. Step number 1, you have to give your audience a reason to care. Then you have to give them a reason to believe. Then you have to tell them what they need to know. And then you have to tell them what they need to do. There has to be a call to action at the end of it. But for the sake of today, I'm going to focus on this one because it's actually the most important one. It's the one we forget the least. When you start, people lose webinars in minutes. You lose your webinar audience in the first 5 minutes because they don't know what they're staying around for because you've not given them a reason to care early. And in fact, one of my frustrations with learning chairs is learning chairs keep on sending me these little flyers telling me who the speaker is. Unless the speaker is famous, I don't care who they are. I care what problem that this will solve in my life. So are you ever frustrated with X? Have you found it really difficult to do this? And then only, well, Susan, who is an expert, will help you do this. But I think it's very important that we, at the beginning of our online events, that we sell the accident in a big way. And let me explain to you what I mean by this. We're always taught, when we get to work with salespeople, we're always taught that we've got to sell features or benefits. And you know, don't sell features, sell benefits. They always say the same thing: you sell the benefit to people. But I'm not sure I believe that, because if I sold you the features of this ambulance and asked you, you know, give me $100, would you want to go in it? The answer would be no. But even if I sold you the benefits, if I said to you, but this thing will get you to hospital quicker, do all of these things, it still wouldn't be that important to you. None of you would give me $100 to go. But if one of you all of a sudden fell off your chair, tripped over, broke both your legs, and were lying there in a bleeding heap of misery, and I said, ha, 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 $1,000, my ambulance is right outside, it'll take you straight away there and you can walk again, then the answer is yes. And the key lesson for me is this: you have to sell the accident before you sell the ambulance. Our job up front is to sell the problem. And the most important thing to do at the beginning of any online event is tell people what problem they have, what itch they have, make them uncomfortable, fill their gas tank, their give a shit tank at the beginning. And then tell them, by the end of this, we're going to answer that for you. Right? We're going to help you understand by the end of this how you can solve that problem. Now they have to wait. If you've sold the accident well enough, then they have to stay on the line for the ambulance. So I always say this kind of line to people: before they buy the ambulance, you have to sell the accident. So that's a core kind of philosophical understanding. And again, I understood I had 10 minutes. So I just wanted to give you this one core idea, first of all. And this is true for every single presentation you do. And it is 10 times more true for pitches you're doing. If you're pitching, this is what it's about. You're not the hero in the story, they are. You've got to sell who the baddie is in their story and then convince them that you're the person who'll help them beat it. And a few other little tips I wanted to tell you about this. The next one is this: stand and deliver, right? you can see that I'm standing up here now, and I don't know if you can see, but maybe it's apparent. But there's something different between me preparing when I got off my last Zoom call 20 minutes ago, and then setting everything up, getting my standing desk standing up so that I could stand and deliver to you. It feels different when you're presenting, and people know you're engaged, but it also tells your body that you're in a different state. So now I deliver this way, different to how I'd act on a Zoom call, because I'm actually trying my best to be a presenter. We can see it here all the time. You can always see when people stand, it just feels different already to the vast majority. Think, get a mental image in your head of all of these webinars you've been on. What percentage of people were standing and talking and delivering to you like they were giving a talk? I don't think that many, and I think people immediately notice when they don't and your diaphragm opens. It's a really important tool. I'd really love you to try that. The next thing is we need to understand something about the attention game that we're in. And I believe in this, is that you have to become a master at interrupting your audience's distraction. It's not about holding their attention. That ship has sailed. You cannot hold their attention. You're trying to hold people's attention in an online event because they can't leave. Now they can. Even already right now, I'm betting 60 to 70% of you have changed tabs at least once while I've been presenting. Right? So my job is to try and draw you back as much as possible to make you want to come back here to listen. And there's a few little tips that we can do. And this next slide will show you how I would recommend dealing with it. So we talk about the idea of people getting distracted all the time. So you can use these magic words. And these magic words on the screen right now will actually really, really help get your audience back. Now, all of you have had to come back to see what these words are. And the words are as simple as the ones I just told you. As you can see here, as this slide illustrates, these are the magic words. When you say things like, as this slide illustrates, people have to come back to see it. This then brings up the next point. And the next point is this: more slides with less is better than less slides with more. If you can have more slides, so you're constantly changing, as we can see here, click. Okay, this point on screen now, click. More slides with less is better than less slides with more. By the way, this is a great life rule. People say to you, only have X amount of slides. That's bullshit. Then all we do is we put on too much information on the slides we're on. You can have as many slides as you want, just make sure you're finished on time. That is the most important rule. Rule number one, if you go 1 minute over on your online event, you've lost your audience because they're already on their next Zoom call, right? There's nothing holding them to the room. So be strict with every speaker, because when speaker one goes 1 minute long at the beginning of your event, speaker 5 is probably ending up 5 minutes late if everybody does that. That 5 minutes is the build at the end of their presentation, and you've lost your audience. And then lastly, I want you to think about this equation. This is a very, very simple equation. I talk about this all the time, about the ROA. Your audience is paying for their event with their attention. Even free events, they're paying for something. I did an event the other day. There was 7,000 people. I spoke for 30 minutes. 7,000 people, 30 minutes. That's 3,500 hours of attention were paid to me. Act accordingly. You can't just show up and throw up when you're speaking for 3.5 hours of human attention, right? Like, you've got to actually do a good job, and you've got to prepare accordingly. So you've got to understand that. But then what about you? Well, in that case, you're then wanting an ROE. If they want an ROA, a return on attention, you want an ROE because you're paying with your effort. So the amount you invest in is kind of like what you want to get back. So I believe that the equation for all eventing, but especially online eventing, because attention is so fleeting, is this: your effort plus their attention equals everyone's ROI. What does that mean? It means you got to prepare even harder. You've got to be better at this than you would be in the in-person space, because again, you can lose your audience in a second. But if you manage to keep them, because it is so rare that you manage to keep people to the end of your presentation, well then, in that case, you're one of the winners. I just thought I'd leave, and I just kind of left this in at the very last minute. I thought it would be handy. You even see the URL. When I was speaking at the MCC track the other day, the communications, Marcom, and membership, track, I thought I'd made a one page with just some tips about some of the videos I've made, like how I share my slides on Zoom. It's like super easy for me. It came on nice and quickly, and I can see my whole screen. I can see my next slide, everything. I've shared like some tips to some of the webinar tools we use, and it's all there, and you can engage with us about what we do in any way as well. So that's there. And that's it. The last little thing, I guess, is a call to action for you is to suggest that right now, I really do believe that your people, if they're not working close to you, they need more vocal leadership than they did in the past. So the most important thing for me is that they have to go out there, and you have to go out there and lead loud. It's right now, loud leadership, vocal leadership is more important than it's ever been before. So that's it for me, everybody. Thank you very much for your attention. That was 10 minutes. Boom.
Well done,
Hope
sir.
some value.
Yeah, that was sweet, man. Thanks so much for joining us.
Right. Any other quick questions before I leave you to it?
Yeah, I got a couple. Does anybody else have any comments, questions about this? So, okay, I'll get going, and then if somebody gets one, do you have another 5 minutes right now?
Dude, I'm super chilled.
Okay, cool.
Yeah.
So one of the things when it comes to doing, like, we've done a lot of sessions too. Thankfully, we've been watching like the audience number like a hawk kind of during the presentation, and we kind of gauge success based on how many people end up at the finish. And we've been doing all right. But I was just curious from your perspective in terms of any tips on like breaking up kind of lecture style content with maybe like entertainment, if you've seen any way to engage an audience outside of like the actual educational presentation portion of it.
So the first thing is, I will say that one of the biggest misnomers is retained audience. In fact, because what often, if I'm on a session and I feel quite bad leaving, I just mute and change tab, and then I'm still there. Gig, and then the gig later. And in fact, the way you realize those people is when you end the show, the 60 people, when you say goodbye, the 60 people that are still there, they've just not come back to close the tab yet. So it's to me the best way to do this. Okay, so let me answer your question first. We try not to split with too much entertainment, but we split with a couple of different things. So if I'm doing a long event, so I've done some 90-minute sessions, which is pretty long in the online space, but then I always bring up multiple speakers during. So I'll bring in a case study. I had, who was it that I had from Canada? Somebody popped on and shared their story with us. But I think maybe Matt Symes, so I'm not sure. But who was it? Somebody popped. Anyway, it'll come back to me. But we actually called them up case study, and we have 5-minute speakers. So that's a break, and then I carry on with my talk, and we have another speaker, and it's more different kind of conversation. We use polls all the time. Polls are your absolute most important tool, and ideally use polls to try and get the audience to create a reason to care. So you might say, hey guys, before we go into this point, I think it's important that we have an understanding of where we all take on this thing. So before I start addressing this, I put up a statistic in the poll, and I want you guys to tell me if you think we've become better, worse, or stayed the same as this number. And then we get the votes and say, that's quite funny. Well, actually, as it happens, 60% of you are actually incorrect. And I want to explain to you why that is and what matters from here. Now people are invested because now I've given you input, I've realized I'm wrong, and now I want to stay on the line. The most important thing, though, is comment storms. So the event has changed. The event structure has changed. I find online events to be more engaging for me as a speaker than in-person events. And the reason is that people always say, oh, but you lose your audience. There's nobody smiling back at you. But in the past, all I basically got was the human equivalent of emojis. People smiled, they laughed, ha ha ha. They were like, or they were like, I could basically get where they clapped. Whereas now, if I'm in the middle of, if I'm in the middle of a sentence and I say something like, this was, one of the most influential books of my life, and then somebody recommends at the side of it, Rich, if you like that book, then this will blow your mind. And I'm like, wow, that's amazing. I see that Doug has just shared an amazing book in the chat with us here. Has anybody else read this? In fact, if I could ask somebody quickly, do me a favor, would you please find an Amazon link or a Goodreads link so we can share that book on there? Thanks so much. And then all of a sudden, 10 links appear. You make your audience work, and they're engaging. So how do we get this right? At the beginning of every event, so we have this is just telling you, there's absolutely not selling. We have a service that we offer our clients where we call Cloud Crew. And before the event begins, part of our job, as well as the stage management and front of house management, is that our guy comes on and tells the audience how to behave. So it says, guys, there's nothing more important for the speaker than you guys chatting. Because if you don't tell them, they're not quite sure how much they should do it. Said you can chat about anything, debate the content, do these kind of things. I'd love to see some chats. Let's start off, where's everybody from today? What's the best place you visited? Start chatting about this thing. Call people out if you think they're wrong. Share the favorite productivity tip you've seen. So now people just start sharing. They realize, hey, I've got permission to act this way. So you've got to educate your audience in the new level of permission, or they don't really engage. They just sit there because they think, shit, am I being interrupting? And then we have somebody on the call who will literally stand there and share little things as well. So we have some plants who are just sharing content, keep the chat going, and then it just carries on. And then you as a speaker, you'll see I put a cheat. I put a little speech bubble on my slides with a rainstorm in it, and I can see it's on my next slide. So if why am I on the same slide? When I clicked, then I remember that I want to ask my audience something here for a comment. I say, guys, in the comments quickly, what was that that book by Malcolm Gladwell with the hush puppy shoes at the beginning of it? What was that called again? And all of a sudden, 5 minutes later, tipping point. You get them back engaged. So that's how I engage them. You make them part of the story. I would share with you a screen. We did an event not so long ago, about 3 weeks ago, and it was amazing. At the end of it, everyone was saying, like, I felt more engaged than in an actual event, and this is the most engaged I've been in weeks, and this has been incredible, because your audience is no longer passive. They're now participatory, and it is taking it up a level. And I think in the EO context, it should be even better. You should be doing it, but you've got to train your speakers that they've got to be engaging. That, by the way, guys, and sorry, this is becoming a long answer, is why don't fall into the trap of having yourself. Hi, everybody. Thank you so much for having me in the studio. We can, like, it looks all very well and good, and you got this 3D virtual set, but then you can't read the comments. The best thing about online events is that when, I don't know if you noticed, was times when I was in your face. I got right up in your face. All of a sudden, if you've got Malcolm Gladwell, like, talking to you, you're having the closest conversation you've had with Malcolm Gladwell in your life. And yet we put people back on a stage in a studio environment, which was it was a bug. Like, the only reason we had stages is so the people in the cheap seats could see. Now we have the opportunity to have people up close. Anyway, this is my soapbox at the moment. I feel very strongly that we're adding novelty where utility is needed.
It doesn't sound like you're very passionate about this subject matter.
No, not at all. Not at all.
Clearly...
I'm not giving it a moment's thought.
No, that's awesome, man. I mean, we're almost out of time, but I just love the idea of, like, tell people how to interact and give them permission. I think it's something we've done a little bit of, but not a lot of. There was a lot of great takeaways from my end, so I really appreciate it, Rich. One last question for you then before we let you go. Do you have an event scheduled right now with EO Canada?
No, we're trying to set up one where I'll do, like, the full masterclass on how to rock a desktop conferencing. I've been chatting. There has been some people trying to put it on. It's weird. Obviously, I don't want to chase up. So it's if it happens, it happens, and it was great. I've kind of said that I'm happy to do it and left it out with everybody. So if people feel there's value and how we can communicate with our teams and with our customers this way, then just let me know. I'd love to do it. Yeah.
Okay. Cool. You were talking to Parveen, or is it Matt? I just want to make sure.
And Matt both kind of said that we're looking at it from different sides. So, again, the last thing I want to do is phone both of them are mates, and then just send and ask them to do it. So that, yeah. If any of you feel and we push for it, eventually, it will happen. I think it'll be great.
Yeah, I'm the learning chair coming in, so I'm gonna make that happen in a big way.
Good luck, everybody, for the rest of the time. And if you did, and my email address is richard@missinglink.com. Like, for EO, like, for the most part, we just ask, and I'm very happy to share any stuff or content or ideas or anything like this.
Thanks a lot, man. You rock.
Shot, guys. Cheers. Okay, bye.
See you, man. Now that Rich is gone, comments, questions, having someone like this, and if we should be doing these in July and August. I've got other people lined up, but I just want to get some sense because the audience size is pretty small right now.
He was amazing.
Right?
Like, amazing. Few key tips and just some incredible energy.